Are you guys done? Because we need you to vacate the area. Okay, you guys need to not be making noise in the background.
Oh my gosh. This dog. He's barking at nothing.
He's barking at something.
See? Oh my gosh. Anyway. So Phoenix was saying we should talk about
You have to
homeschooling.
speak up.
Oh, Phoenix.
Hey guys, how you guys doing? We're
Hi.
back for, I think, the third installment of Life with the Brandons. I think that's the name of the show. I'm
The
sorry.
Brandons.
The Brandons. There we go. So apparently, we've been getting a lot of requests to speak about specific topics, and my wife, she was asked to speak on homeschooling since we homeschool our kids. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and some of the reasons as to why we put our kids in homeschooling and what some of the problems have been with homeschooling. I guess the pros and cons of homeschooling and how the kids enjoy it or not enjoy it or this, that, and the other thing. So we're just going to cover the whole gamut.
I know.
And that's pretty much it. So, without further ado.
So, I was actually the one who pushed for homeschooling first, right? Because we came back from Germany and we had them initially in private school.
Yeah.
So they've really almost always been in private school, except for overseas.
Right.
Oh no.
No.
Overseas they were in private school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing about it is, like, I'm old school, right? I went to public school.
I'm a product of public school. If I'm
a product of public school. And I think that there was absolutely nothing wrong, at least in terms of like my public school education, there was nothing wrong with it. But of course, we're talking about 40 years ago.
Exactly.
So, you know.
Well, 40 years ago now, but.
Yeah, 40 years ago now. You know, so, yeah, to me, you know, I had a great education in public school, you know, but again, like I said, 40 years ago, morals were a little bit different. People had a little bit more, you know, social skills, and you never heard of any sort of things involving, you know, elements of crime or violence in elementary school, high school, or physical school. But the worst thing you got was like, say, hey, I'm going to call you out.
Yeah, but I think we have to back up a little bit because I think and I don't know, just like from you and we are not like, I don't want to say the typical, but I don't know. Where I grew up, I was like the only, maybe it was like a handful of black people in my class.
Yeah, me too.
You know what I mean? So the majority didn't look like me.
Right.
Right? So I don't know, like, for everybody else, how they grew up. But as far as we're concerned, there wasn't a lot of crime. There wasn't, you know, you could walk down the street, you could walk to your girlfriend's house or your friend's house who lived, you know, like 5 blocks over, and your parents didn't have to worry about anything.
Right.
So I think we were at sort of at an advantage. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was just different. Like the environment was different.
Right.
Because even in some of my friends that I got to know in high school who didn't go to the same high school as I did, but went to the school in the city, it was completely different.
Right.
You know, there was crime, there was, you know, drugs, I mean, you name it, it was there. So I think our upbringing was definitely reflected on our school experience.
No, I totally get that.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, in terms of that, our experience is based on where we grew up and how we grew up. And, you know, I totally get it. We want, you know, a life for our children to be better than the one that we had. So from that standpoint, I think that the neighborhoods that our children are in are kind of comparable, if not better, to the ones that we grew up in. So
Yeah.
you would think that the public schools would be
better.
on par, if not better. So I get it. Everything's relative.
Right.
So,
But because of that, you were like, they can go to public school.
right, I was saying, oh yeah, they can go to public school. I'm a product of public school. Nothing wrong with that. I went on to earn my degrees,
Yeah.
you know, in college, so on and so forth. I mean, you know, athletics and all the rest of that stuff. So I figured, okay, if that was a good experience for me,
Should be good enough for
it
them.
should be good enough for them. But you weren't for that.
I don't, yeah, and I'm just trying to think back. I don't know
Because
why
you
I
were
was
being kind
so-
of bougie. That's what it was. You were being bougie.
But why though? You know what I'm
I
saying?
have no
I don't
idea.
know either. I think also it's probably just that maternal thing. Like I want my kids close. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I can't recall as to why I was so adamant about them not going to public school.
I don't know either, but I know we were angry with each other.
I know.
And, you know, I try and live by that credo, you know, happy wife, happy life.
Try to.
Yeah, try to, because you're a little difficult.
Sometimes.
You're a lot difficult, but, you know, I got a little bit of love for you.
Yeah.
Had to develop it, work on it. I love a little bit of love. But anyway, yeah, it was a pressure cooker situation in terms of you basically saying there's no way that our children are going into public school. And I don't know if that's because of some of the experience that we had when they were in Germany, you know, with the kids going to, that's really when they had like a few instances of public school experience.
Yeah.
And our kids are highly intelligent, but they were labeled as.
I think that's where it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had 2 of our children labeled as being, you know,
Problem kids.
problematic children, educationally challenged,
Yeah.
and they were the farthest from that. Right? So we wound up putting them in public or in private school,
Right.
a private Christian school
Right.
in Germany.
I think that's where it started.
I think so too.
Yeah. Because Caleb was really tormented. I mean, his teacher didn't know what to do with him, so I got a call from him at school every single day.
Right.
And I was like, this is ridiculous because he's acting out, quote unquote, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He's done with his work, so he's picking on other kids and picking on her, but she just had no idea how to deal with him.
Right.
But it wasn't that he was a bad kid, he was just smart and finished his work and
That was it.
That was
so
it.
he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was it.
yeah. And then with Everend, that was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
What was he in 5th grade or 6th grade or something like that? And the teacher's like, well, he has to be responsible for all of his work. I'm like, he's 10 years old or whatever the age was. You can't just like let them go and expect that they're going to be mature enough to do all their work, you know, on time and hand everything in. She's like, well, that's just how I operate. And so he hadn't handed anything in for
With no
months.
guidance.
Yeah, with no guidance.
Right.
And so he was like, he doesn't pay attention in class, da 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 da. And I was just like, no, you failed as a teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
On so many different fronts. Number one, not acknowledging the fact that not every child is the same and not every single child learns the same exact way.
Right.
And number two, she failed to let us know
Oh yeah.
in advance or while the process, while everyone was having these problems, you know, hey, listen, you know, this is what's going on with Everett. Maybe we need to come up with a game plan. She
Right.
let us know way, way, way after the fact.
Yeah. At the marking period.
Yeah. And that's just not,
Yeah, it was bad.
that's not a good situation. I mean, you want to be in a situation where you're working collaboratively with the teachers to benefit the child, so the child has the best
Right.
experience that they can have.
Yeah.
And that just didn't happen
No.
there.
And then we were fortunate though to get into a private school overseas.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it just stuck. I was like, I don't want to put my kids back in that hellhole of an experience.
Right.
So,
Right. So when we came back to the United States, and here in Texas, we immediately started looking for a private Christian school,
right.
and I think they enjoyed it,
Yeah, they did.
but I think some of the issues that we've experienced as parents is that we quickly realized, no matter where our children went to school, whether it was overseas, public, or private, that the way the school system is set up now is way different than it was when we were children. It's more like a penal system now,
Yeah.
right? So, the children are expected to act a certain way, be a
Right,
certain
yeah.
way, that may or may not be realistic,
Right.
right? Now, granted, if a child has behavioral issues, then they have behavior issues. Usually the parents know that in advance, and usually they're trying to do something about that in advance, right? And usually, again, they're trying to work with the teachers to let them know, hey, if Johnny's doing this or Mary's doing this, then, this is some things you need to look out for,
Right.
right? But our children weren't like that. And we were getting calls about behavioral issues
Right.
and things of that nature. And I'm not trying to say that our children are perfect or like they're super, super, super on genius level. Some of them might be. But
Tell the story about Micah's teacher and the work that
oh yeah.
This is funny, you guys.
So this is definitely the major reason. This was the turning point that caused us to take our children out of even private school.
Yeah.
So basically our children, well, Micah, our eldest daughter,
Yeah.
was it was towards the end of the year, and she had finished with all of her school requirements, and
She had an A.
she had an
Alright.
A
Yeah.
across the board, straight A's, and we get a call from her teacher, and she said to us that Micah's refusing to turn in her homework, and she's refusing to do any work. And so we asked, well, what's the issue? And the teacher pretty much said to us, well, there's really not an issue. She's just not handing in her work. And I'm like, well, is this going to impact her grade? And she said, absolutely not. So I asked, well, does Micah know this? And she said, well, yes.
Yeah.
So if she couldn't do anything to make her grades better,
Right.
and she couldn't even do anything to make her grades worse, then our little 6-7-year-old child at the time was smart enough to realize, well, then, there's no point in doing anything more
Right.
if I can't do any better and I can't do any worse. And she had expressed that to her teacher.
Yeah. I think her teacher was just like, who do you think you are?
Exactly. Exactly. But that's a product of, I think, how we raise our children
Right,
to, think about what it is that you're doing. And she thought it through, and she said, well, hey, I can't do any better, I can't do any worse. It makes no sense to do anything more.
Yeah.
And that was it. So she stopped.
Yeah. But the teacher was felt as if she had lost control, and I think that was one of the issues. The teacher was like, why
Right.
can't I control this young lady?
Right.
And when she talked to us, thinking that she would probably get somewhere with us, and realized that she wasn't getting anywhere with us, she was just sort of like, oh, okay, these folks are.
Oh, this is where she. Oh, I see. Oh, she's one of them smart ones. Yeah, she's one of them. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
All
that
right,
was that.
guys.
So yeah. So again, what we experienced in terms of like the major turning point. So some of the concerns that I think we had with respect to homeschool is like, oh my gosh, you know, every single homeschooler that I've ever experienced was a weirdo.
Yeah.
They were a little socially dysfunctional,
Really granola.
extraordinarily granola or hippie-ish.
Yeah. Okay, you too. Yeah. Why don't you listen to her? She clearly doesn't want to be bothered. Go on. And you go too.
Yeah, call Rex too. Call him.
Go on, Rex.
He doesn't want to listen.
No, I know.
Rex.
Come on. Let's go, pup. Let's go. Go on.
I'm just like, I just want to sit here. I wasn't bothering anybody.
Once you guys take him for a walk, and that would definitely help.
Merrick, you're walking in.
Yes, you guys need to walk them. So, we can't do this right now because we're gonna have to edit big time anyway. Come walk Princess while Alan walks, whatchamacallit.
She's like, if you don't stop breathing on my neck.
Grab the chain by, yeah, there you go.
Don't bite me.
She's like,
Get down.
Princess, come on. Princess, come on. Princess.
this is like, okay.
You have bags for her? Get some bags for her because you know she's gonna do something.
Get a bag. Do you have a bag?
No, I'm putting her girl's bag after I put her leash on. She keeps running away. Princess, come here. Princess. Go, Princess.
Ooh. Rex.
Get down. Get down. Get down. Here.
Wow.
Another crackhead.
No.
Stay still. Princess. You stay still. I can put your leash on. Okay. When did you walk away? Where's the bag?
Do you just put it in your pocket?
When did you walk away?
You guys need to hurry up and get out.
Okay, guys, like mommy and I have to get going on this. Yeah, so I think like some of the issues that we had with public school was number one. We didn't like that it was a penal system. Like our
Yeah.
kids were getting in trouble for absolutely
Nothing.
small things. Number two, we didn't have control over how parents were raising their other children, and we didn't like how our children were being influenced potentially by other kids. And number three, we didn't like the fact that our children were not being trained how to think. They were being basically taught to, you know, go along with the system.
Study for a test.
Study, right, and then
Yeah.
like purge, study for a test, purge, and there was no real learning environment. It was like just studying stuff.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the thing that got me too with the Christian school was that even though they say they're a Christian school, there's a lot of unchristian stuff going on in the school.
Right.
So that didn't, settle well with me either. And I'm like, what is the point of that?
Right. Right. So we started looking at homeschooling options.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot out there.
what we realized is that actually a lot of the Christian schools, their curriculum is actually based on a homeschooling format. So we started asking some of the Christian schools what were the programs that they
Right.
were using, and we got quite a few. Switched on Schoolhouse, Abeka, and there was a few others. But we did our research and we found one that worked for us, which is Swiss on Schoolhouse, which seemed to be something that the kids like too, because everything was computer based. You can get the books if you want,
Right.
so on and so forth. But
You have to, what's also important is that you have to understand how your child
learns,
learns,
Yeah.
because not every child is the same. So
right,
that was an important aspect of what curriculum
right.
to use as well.
And we wanted a curriculum that addressed every way that our children learn. Like we have some kids that they will sit down and they just need to bore through everything and won't get up, won't eat, won't pee, won't sleep, won't do anything until they complete the test. And we
Right.
have, like Merrick, she needs to be up like every 5 minutes. She cannot
Yes.
stay still.
Yeah.
She's got to get up, maybe work on some choreography, dance, chat with her friends, and then come back to it,
Right.
and she gets it done. And then we have combinations like Micah, she'll be all in for
Yeah, and then she'll be like,
a minute for one subject, and she'll just work on one subject, complete it, go to the next subject,
Yeah.
complete it, go to the next subject, complete it, so on and so forth, just the one subject. So we needed a program that addressed
all of them.
all of their different learning styles, the way they wanted to have their learning experience be. And I think it's worked out because they're all A
Yeah,
students.
they're all excellent at what they do, and it's funny because they're older brothers who chose to. Well, Caleb chose to go to public school because of track.
For high school.
Right, for high school.
Which made sense.
Right, and then Everin was just like, forget homeschooling, I just need to graduate, basically. So,
Right.
but both of those folks, both of their older brothers were like, you guys, school is horrible.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, school is horrible. You guys don't know how good we had it.
Right, when they
So
were homeschooled.
stop complaining.
Yeah. Yeah.
School is like jail. Like, we heard that so many times.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, so just another reason that homeschooling has been reinforced in our house too.
Right.
Is that we don't want our kids exposed to that.
Right. But I think the issues that we had initially, never experiencing homeschooling, there were quite a few. Number one, how would our children react? Because our children were very social.
Yeah.
They're athletes, so on and so forth. They were involved in different social activities. So number one, how were they going to react to not being in that
Right.
social environment? And based on what we had seen before, we did our research. What was her name? Liz Borland, who's unfortunately
Yeah.
no longer with us.
Right.
She passed away a few years ago. But she was one of our chief references that we spoke to when it came to homeschooling our children, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you guys should do it," because her
Yes,
children
yeah.
were homeschooled. And I gotta admit, a lot of the children that she exposed us to were super, super, super weird, socially awkward, not very social,
Yeah.
the whole entire nine. And I was just like, "There's no way in hell we're gonna expose our children to
To that.
that.
Yeah.
These people are flipping crazy." At least that's what I thought, And even some of the workshops.
Yeah.
Like-
you guys went to that one summer camp thing that was bad.
Yeah. No.
Sorry.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. But I
No.
mean, for those people who do want to homeschool, I do think it's important that they find an outlet for their kids. You know what I mean? That's going to be conducive to how their kids are and their personalities.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely important, but just running through some of the other concerns that we had, or are we going to have the time? Because a lot of these systems are set up where like the parents have to do the majority of the grading, and you
Yeah.
mean to tell me I'm working a 9 to 5, and then on top of that I got to come home and I've got to grade all this work
Right.
and all the rest of this stuff, and then it can be overwhelming if you don't have the right system in place.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Because I do remember I said, I was like, yeah, we're going to homeschool, but it's not going to be me.
Yeah. Yeah. It was me.
Because I don't have the patience and, yeah, no.
Because I'm an entrepreneur, I can make up my own schedule, and my wife, unfortunately, can't. Her life is dictated by what the hospital says
Right.
she has to do. So I was the lucky one.
But you're the best one. You're the best one for the job.
You think so?
I know so.
How is that?
Because you're very patient. Caleb, come here. You have 2 different sneakers on for one. You want an opinion? Oh my god.
The gray one. Oh no, the white one. We're good.
Either one is fine.
The white one. It's snazzier.
Who do you think was... If I had to stay home and teach you all, do you think...
Come on
how,
camera.
How do you think that would have worked out for you?
You can just crouch down right
Yeah.
here.
You don't have patience.
Come in the frame so people can see you.
This is our son Caleb. Wave to the peoples.
Yeah, they should know Caleb.
Caleb just got accepted into every single college that he applied for.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And he's an athlete. He's looking to run track 400. Keep an eye out for him because I'm sure he's going to be doing great things. But anyway, what were you saying, babe?
Well, he answered it, but answer it again. If you looking back now, if I was the one who stayed home to teach you guys when you were being homeschooled, how do you think that would have worked out?
Not that good. Pretty sure everybody would have better grades,
Oh,
but you've just been yelling at everybody.
that's right.
Mhm.
See? Whereas Daddy doesn't yell as much.
No,
Yeah.
they
See?
just do what they do, and then when he goes and checks the grades, then he starts yelling at you.
Yeah, because they're supposed to be doing their work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he
Right.
holds them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. So do you think you were at an advantage when you started high school since you were homeschooled?
I don't know. It didn't really matter to me.
How about?
Cause I've always done my work.
Yeah.
Right. I gotcha.
That's true.
But maturity level, what do you think?
I was more mature. Mainly because I don't like to talk to people that much. So it wasn't really anything I had to do or deal with.
Right.
Because I was always to myself or with the older people.
Right. So that was instilled here.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Well, thank you. We're going to let you go about enjoying your day. We thank you for your comments. We love you.
Me too.
That's it. That's all we got for you, my man.
I have like $40, please.
What? Why? You buying the dress?
No,
Well, what do you need $40 for? Are you buying spikes?
get something to eat.
$40 to eat?
$40 to get something to eat? That's more like 10 or 15, maybe 20.
What are you getting to eat?
Mm-hmm.
Are you purchasing lunch for your girlfriend?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see? You got to give us all of the information. Don't give us partial information. Because $40 for one person to eat, what you having? Like oysters,
I
caviar?
know.
Like what you having?
Steak?
I'm pretty hungry.
Well, even a top restaurant is $35 for a steak, so 40 is still more. Maybe.
All right, so give us a few moments to complete this, and then
Yeah.
we'll get with you on that. Yeah, so, as you can see, our child, Caleb, he feels like he definitely benefited from homeschooling. And yeah, I think, you know, I'm kind of glad that I've been able to be the one that's here,
Yeah.
you know, instilling that our values into them, you know, because we always see so many times, especially now, you know, where students' friends, right, and our child's friends, and the school is having a major impact
Oh, yeah.
on, you know,
Kids' lives.
the kids' lives. And, you know, not that I want to be overly spiritual, but the Bible says to the man he's supposed to be the lead minister into his family, right? And it's up to us to instill the value set in the child,
Right.
right? And prepare them for the world. And I don't know, you know, if you can do that realistically, if your child is exposed to someone else for 8, 9, 10 hours a day.
Right.
And when you see them, they're pretty much being rushed off to whatever other extracurricular activities that they're supposed to be doing. Maybe if you get a chance, maybe a dinner
Right.
before they're off doing their schoolwork,
Right.
and then
And then
you
they're
don't see
sleeping.
them because they're sleeping, and then that's a, you know, a repetitive cycle, and there's really not a lot of involvement.
Right.
So I will say this, if you can, consider homeschooling, and if you can, have at least one of the parents be available. I know that's not realistic for a lot of households, but if you can definitely do it,
Yeah.
then do it. That makes a huge difference,
I agree.
right?
I agree. I mean, right now our kids are, I mean, they're really on autopilot. You know what I mean?
Well, that's
They know what work they have to do, and it's been, you know, over time we've developed that in them. But right
Right.
now they're like, yeah, we know we need to do our schoolwork, and Merrick gets up. She's a princess. She gets up at noon, which we're trying to change that. But I mean, there's some liberties and things that can happen when you're homeschooling. You know, there's not a set regimen, which is nice.
right. I mean, you can make it as lax or as strict as you want it to be. We knew for a fact what's more important to us is teaching our children how to think.
Right.
And giving them a real world experience in terms of decision making,
Right.
right? So some households might be more focused on, you know, the academics of it, like making sure that their kids are getting the best grades,
Right.
and this, that, and the other thing. I'll tell you this right off of the bat: most of the homeschooling programs or formats are typically harder than
Oh yeah.
traditional school, right?
And
So,
homeschool kids are held to a higher standard.
Yeah,
especially
they
when
are.
it comes to like getting into college and that sort of thing. So
right,
yeah,
right.
it's harder.
It's right. So, you know, it's going to be more strenuous for them to begin with in terms of that. So, luckily for us, you know, we've been able to stick with it. So I don't know how many years we've been homeschooling, but at least since 2011, 12-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah?
Yeah, because we got here 9,
Yeah.
10 or 11. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
almost 8 years.
so we've seen the process out. We've seen it play out, right? So initially there was an adjustment period, and I think there was some issues. Again, we definitely focus more on training our children how to think than anything else. So I'm not going to say that our way is the best way, but it's the way that worked for us.
For us,
Like I
yeah.
said, you know, some households might want their children to be more focused on academics, this, that, and the other thing. But we set no time limit on when they need to get their work done. We set no time limit on when they get up, when they study. Of course, we had a reasonable time frame for them to go to bed. But as long as they completed all the work within the time frame that it needed to be completed in, we were hands off.
Right.
Now, mind you, there's some systems out there that require the parents to be very hands-on, but the system that we picked out
Didn't require as much.
didn't require the hands-on that a lot of the other programs do. Ours was completely software generated,
Right.
and they got immediate results, right? And that was switched on Schoolhouse,
Right.
right? So there was a minimum of 5 subjects that they had to complete. So it's the same thing as
School.
Yeah, we didn't have to worry about like the other extracurricular stuff like gym and all the rest of that stuff, since all of our children were athletes, right? And we didn't have to worry so much about the social because of them being athletes and competing on teams.
Right.
They got all the social, you know, maybe not as much as they wanted to, but most certainly they had, you know, the social aspect already
Right.
put into the situation. And of course, you know, us being involved with church, they developed friends through church and so on
Right.
and so forth. So we didn't have to worry about that. It was really just them focusing on managing their time.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, I think.
Right. Managing their time and learning how to think through, you know, the process of the day. Right? What does it look like?
Right.
Because realistically, you're in a traditional setting, the kids were spending 8-9 hours at school.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And our kids, when they started being homeschooled, they were getting done with all of their work in
Yeah.
like 3
2
hours.
2 or 3 hours, yeah. It's like lunchtime. You're like, we're done with our work. You're done? What?
Right.
Yeah, and so they have the entire day to do whatever they want to do.
Exactly.
And it's still the same now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think like the only time they really got disciplined is when I had to go in and do specific grading, and I see that like, you know, oh wow, like, you know, they got a D or an F on something, and they didn't come to me ahead of time, because
Right.
that's one of the rules that we had, right? If you're having issues, come see me first. Let's
Right.
work it out. Let's
Right.
work through it. It took a few years for them to build up to that point, because I think they were so used to being penalized that just had to go out. And then they realized that, oh, you know, only thing dad's going to do is just reassign it.
Right.
And I think that's another benefit of homeschooling, right? Is that if your child doesn't get exactly the grade that you want or they want, then it's not a penal system.
Right.
It's more like real life. Okay, you don't get it. You keep on practicing
Right.
until you
Let's
get it.
figure out where you don't understand and
Yeah.
get you through that and move on.
And I think the impact that's had on them has been tremendous, because they don't take everything so seriously. Not meaning that they take things lightly, but they
Right.
don't take things so seriously. It's like, okay, well, let's figure out, like you just said, where did I go wrong? How can we correct this? How can we make this better? If the worst thing that happens is, if I get a failing grade, is that dad's just going to reassign it.
Right. But it's a reassignment, not just to get through it, but to understand it.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the difference, to learn it instead of,
Right.
you know, just studying something. And there is a difference.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what would you think is the biggest plus that we could tell folks about homeschooling if somebody's like on the fence? You know what I mean? Like they want to homeschool, but they're not really sure if they should, since there are so many choices. You know, obviously we answered that already. You just have to figure out a system that's good for you. But what would be the biggest plus?
The biggest plus by far is the child actually figuring out who they are. For sure. So what do I mean by that, right? So again, a lot of times when you have like your kids in a public school situation, they're following along with the crowd. And they have very little time to develop, you know, interests. They're trying to do things that they know will either potentially look good for a college application or things of that nature, but is it really what they want to do?
Right.
You know what I mean? So a lot of kids just get pushed through the system. When the kids, in the homeschool situation, when the kids get done with their work, the rest of the time is theirs.
Right.
So it's like we always say this, like, you know, an apple seed can only grow up to be one thing,
An apple tree.
an apple tree, and produce apples. An orange will not be an orange seed will not
Right.
ever be an apple tree, right? An orange will only grow
Yeah.
up to be an orange tree that will produce oranges. So, but the quality of the fruit is determined by
What it's in.
what
Soil.
what soil, where's that seed sown in, right? So homeschooling allows that child to explore themselves, and find out what it is that they like.
Right.
So we found out, our children found out, oh, we like to sing.
Right.
So they, one of them is taking private singing lessons
Right.
during the normal time frame when most kids are in school.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We had another child find out, oh my gosh, I really like to dance. Right?
Yeah.
We had another child say, hey, I'm going to teach myself Korean and Japanese and Chinese.
Right.
And we didn't pull it out of them. This
Right.
is things that they cultivated and developed an interest in because they had the time to do that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So I think if you want a well-rounded child, I think if you want your child not to be exposed to a penal system, I think if you want your child to develop into a thinker, a leader,
Yeah.
I think if you don't want your child to be exposed to some of we hear about school shootings, it
Ugh,
seems like every
yeah,
other week.
Yeah.
Now, if you just want, a
Peace of
better,
mind.
a peace of mind, knowing where your child is at and what they're doing, then I think homeschooling realistically is the way to do it.
Yeah.
And you just have to find the program that works for you and your family,
I agree.
And the kids will tell you, like, look, this sucks, this doesn't work,
I
you
know.
need to find something different. And I think that's how we narrow down our process.
Yeah. I agree.
But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that we can do as parents is try and nurture our children and put them in an environment where they can excel. And I just don't think, now I'm not saying this is, for everybody, but I think if you want to see your child actually blossom into the best that they can be, then, homeschooling might be the route to go.
Yeah. I agree. Because that's what we did, and it's worked really well for us.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they're an athlete, they can always transition, at least for high school,
Mm-hmm.
Into high school, especially if you have someone or an athlete that is talented
Right.
and needs to be scouted. They can always do those last 3-4 years
In high school.
in a public school environment.
Right. But I don't know if you even have to do that since there are all these, private clubs for athletics, AAU, clubs in almost any sport.
Right.
Those coaches are well connected to colleges. So even
Right.
if you're like, no, I'm not sending my kid to any sort of public school, even in high school, but the child is athletic, then you still have options.
Yes,
Yeah.
you have quite a bit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I hope that answered your guys' questions. Sometimes our discussions are lengthy, but that's okay, right?
Yeah, sure.
The information gets out there. So we're done for the day. Thanks for listening and joining us as we talked about homeschooling for our kids, and hopefully that answers some of your questions as well. And if you still have questions, there's a feed at the end of this. Go ahead and drop those questions, and we'll be more than happy to answer them for you. So,
Yeah.
until next time, we are the Brandons. We'll see ya.
Okay. Bye.